Let me just start off by saying, where on earth has this level of writing been all season? I'm just absolutely speechless and just mind blown with what I saw with this episode of The Flash. This is for season 9, episode 10, titled A New World Part 1, and I genuinely believe that we have just seen one of, if not the best episode of the entire show. We've had 8 episodes of nothing but disappointment, but I'm so glad that this show has started to pick up. We had an absolute banger with last week's episode, and this one just completely raised the bar to a whole other level, and I'm so glad that this is finally happening with the final few episodes of the season, where things are getting big, things are picking up, and the season is making a comeback. I am just absolutely so happy right now because I love feeling this show so much, and it just feels so great to just positively review this show again and just get so excited, theorize about everything, talk about everything, and just get excited for it, just feel the show again. And this episode, just wow, it was absolutely amazing. From music to writing to dialogue, everything was just so perfect. Grant Gustin and Matt Letcher, holy cow, they just raised the bar. Whenever those two were on screen together, it was just so intense, and I just absolutely loved it. Both of them were just so well acted, and also we were in an emotional train wreck every single time Barry shared the scene with his parents, and oh my god, it was absolutely beautiful. And the choice of music they used definitely just helped, and it just felt like a season 1 episode of The Flash. It felt very nostalgic, and it was so well written. I genuinely believed that this was a season 1 episode. But obviously we do also have the full circle moment to talk about as well, and yeah, we do have our main villain being introduced, all of which we'll be talking about in this video, which will be my review and breakdown for The Flash Season 9 Episode 10, titled A New World Part 1. But obviously before I get into more in detail with the breakdown itself, obviously spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the episode, you have been warned, and trust me, this is big, so please don't watch this video unless you've seen the episode. Unless, of course, if you don't care about spoilers, then you're more than welcome to stay. But yeah, this episode kicks off in the future, and we see like blue roses and stuff like that. I'm getting confused. I'm like, okay, what's going on over here? We could tell that we're in the West House, and we have this figure just dressing up, humming, getting ready to go to work, as we could assume. And it is revealed to be Rick Cosnett's character. Now, I'm not going to directly say Eddie Thawne, because we don't know if it is Eddie Thawne or not, judging from the ending. So I'm just going to say Rick Cosnett's character, or I'll just call him Cobalt Blue, because we know that's the character who he will be playing. But he's going to work, and he's in the future. Now, we do, of course, get a time jump in this episode, because we do see that Iris's belly has just grown absolutely just enormous, and she's reaching like the final few stages of pregnancy, so we knew that a time jump happened. We do also have Chester and Allegra, and Allegra's pretty much trying on the suit that Chester made, and she doesn't like it, which fair enough. It was very goofy, but I don't really like the scene. I didn't really care for it too much, and same for the Joe and Cecile. It was nice seeing Joe back on screen, but once again, didn't really care. And another one, like, we had this like very classy music, and we had Keone more with her abilities, so she's further exploring her abilities, which I like. It's pretty cool, I guess, but once again, it wasn't really that necessary. We didn't really need this. And yeah, she's just writing to Caitlin and Frost, so that is pretty interesting, I guess, as well. But yeah, obviously they're gonna further develop with Keone's abilities as we get through the remaining episodes. But definitely the more interesting part. So as I said, we have Barry and Iris, and Barry just speeding and just pretty much doing things last minute. I believe he just built that crib like while he was speeding, and also he does mention like meta dampeners and how he doesn't want to see Nora accidentally using her abilities, which obviously that is a very smart move. But obviously Iris does get a notification that she's going to be getting that Pulitzer from the Red Death article, and we do see from her like her belly, we do see that like, you know, she's reached the final few stages of pregnancy, so we know that a time jump has happened. Now we then see Barry being phased out of time, and this is through the doings of the blue crystal, as we see Barry like going all blue and he just completely disappears. We knew that this was going to be in the year of 2000, most specifically a couple of hours before Nora Allen gets murdered and Henry Allen goes to prison, pretty much the night where it all happened. He goes back a few hours before that happens. And yeah, Barry like tries to time travel, but he's not able to like access the Speed Force properly, so he is stuck in the past. Now we do see Barry going to CCPD to speak with Joe, but then he bumps into quote unquote Detective Singh, this time not Captain Singh, and Barry's just like, oh, I just call everyone Captain, that's why. He goes on to find Joe. But over here, Barry asks Joe for help, and this is obviously Officer West. This is not Captain Joe West. This is not Detective Joe West. This is Officer West, as this is the year of 2000 after all. And he asks Joe for help. And at first, I was like, what could he possibly ask for that Joe could pretty much help out with? But it turns out that Barry wants to find Tina McGee, and he assumes that she would know how to help Barry with the current situation that he is in. So that was a nice, name drop. I thought that was pretty cool. And, we do have a quite unique conversation between them, because obviously this time Joe doesn't really know who he's talking to. Well, at least this version of Joe, whereas obviously in the point of view of Barry, this was who his pretty much second father was. So, that type of interaction I found pretty cool and interesting. But then Barry obviously sees the calendar, March 18th, the year 2000, the night where it all happens, and Barry just notices immediately. He gets all emotional, and we do have the flashback to when Reverse Flash kills Nora Allen as well. So Barry definitely did notice, and it does haunt him. This episode has been all about this night just completely haunting Barry, and then by the end he makes just absolute peace with it, and I just absolutely just loved how well crafted this episode was. We then have a phone call, this time with Professor Stein, which I found pretty interesting, but obviously Professor Stein just thought that he was just a complete prankster, so he just declines the call. But while that's happening, Barry's attention is caught by something, and this is where he sees Nora and Henry Allen right in front of him, and this is when the emotions start kicking in. But yeah, as we knew, Matt Letcher was back for this episode, and this is when we had Eobard Thawne speeding past Barry trying to kill him with the hit and run. But obviously Nora and Henry Allen save the day. They save Barry and they jump in for the help, in which Barry is in hospital, and this is when things get absolutely emotional and just very, very sad. Barry's just completely filled with emotion when he wakes up from him obviously being knocked out. He wakes up in the hospital to see that Henry Allen and Nora Allen are both looking after him. Barry just gets absolutely emotional talking to his family. He's obviously holding it in because he's not able to tell them who he is, and he's trying to hold in, hug them and stuff like that. And I just found that very, very emotional. But obviously the fact that this is the last time that he sees his parents as well, he gets to see his family again, that emotional element alone, it was just absolutely brilliant. He obviously calls himself Bart because he cannot call himself Barry, otherwise this will mess up the timeline. Things will go bad. But yeah, Grant Gustin's acting in this scene, just in this episode in general, to be honest, it was just absolutely incredible. But yeah, Barry's in tears, and the Allens, Nora and Henry Allen, they were being very helpful for Barry. They're showing how what nice people they are, always down to just help people. So that was very, very cool. And obviously little do they know that is their son. I did really like how Nora Allen did say that he looks just like my father. She did say this in season 1 episode 23 as well, so that callback was also very, very nice. But yeah, we then have Joe and Singh at the crime scene, and they're pretty much talking about the hit and run, and Joe does mention how this was the exact same person that was at CCPD earlier. And then Joe ends up finding the blue crystal, which is the blue crystal is pretty much calling to Joe. And this was something I wasn't expecting, but Joe picks up the crystal and he just gets whammied by it. The blue crystal completely just takes control over Joe. But yeah, Barry then goes out to eat with his family again. This is the final dinner they have, and once again, the emotions of it all are just absolutely wonderful, because obviously Barry gets to see them again, but also he knows that this is just a few hours after something very, very tragic to his past self happens, and this was something that's been haunting his past like just haunting him for so long. This night of Nora Allen's murder, it's been haunting him for so long, and he's never made peace with it. It's always been something like very emotional, something that always bothered him. And yeah, the fact that he's just spending these last few moments with his family was absolutely incredible. We have an amazing pep talk with Nora and Henry Allen, and they obviously pep talk Barry. They offer Barry to also stay over and just help him not feel alone. And this is when Barry just starts panicking due to like how full of emotion he is. And then we have him running off, and this is when Eobard Thawne arrives, saying someone's having a bad day, because obviously Thawne is here to do something, which is kill Barry as a child. This was his original plan, not killing Nora Allen. Killing Nora Allen was plan B. Killing Barry as a child was the main plan, and this was until Barry speeds his past self out of that house. That's why he kills Nora Allen. And obviously, in terms of this reverse flash, this is a reverse flash that we haven't seen before. Like, he's from the point in time of season 2, but just a little bit later, to a point where he knows that Barry Allen is the Flash, whereas the reverse flash from season 2 didn't know Barry Allen was the Flash. He just found out which time period the Flash is from. But obviously, this version of Reverse Flash has not lived through any of the events of season 1 all the way up until season 8. But yeah, we obviously have Barry then attempting to kill Thawne. Like, he tries phasing his hand through Thawne, but he ends up resisting. Now, we do also find out that it wasn't Thawne that brought Barry to this past, so it was obviously something else, and that was related to the Blue Crystal, which does have a rivalry with Barry as well. But yeah, we then have this very like intense scene where we have Thawne and Barry having drinks, but Barry, he's like, he's very tensed, and Thawne is just determined to just destroy Barry's life. Obviously, Barry already knew what happened in that night because he's lived through everything already. So he's pretty much fooling Thawne in a way where he's like, oh, wait, you're here to kill me as a child. Which, true, that is the main plan. But Eobard Thawne doesn't know what happens as the end result. But obviously, Barry does. And that does play a big part for the end of the episode as well, which creates the full circle moment. But we have Thawne just absolutely just verbally destroying Barry, and Barry just getting very emotional, and he eventually gives up. He's saying, "You win, I can't stop you," in which Thawne questions why he's walking away, but Barry, as he mentions, he's walking towards what's supposed to happen. So he's just following the timeline exactly how it's supposed to. But Thawne, he's not aware of what happens in this timeline at this moment. Obviously, that is the main difference. But we then have Nora and Henry Allen talking about their lost patient, which is obviously Barry, or as they know, Bart. But yeah, then Barry comes in, and this is when Nora and Henry Allen were like, telling Barry how they were very worried about him, and like, they wanted to know like what happened, things like that. Like, he just randomly disappeared. But yeah, Barry mentions that he's always wondered what it's like to just have his parents back and what to say. And then Nora and Henry Allen like, well, you can just tell us. And it's just very beautiful. This scene was just packed with full of emotion, and just it was absolutely just wonderful. And like, if it weren't for him, he wouldn't be able to do any of this. Like, he wouldn't be able to be the man he is today. All of that is just absolutely beautiful. And the best part about this is he actually tells his parents as well, which obviously Nora and Henry Allen are not aware of, but he is, and he ends up hugging it out with his family as well. It was just absolutely beautiful. But yeah, then the Blue Crystal ends up calling to Barry, which he finds himself with Joe, who's obviously still whammied. Barry thinks it's our Joe because Joe does say, I know what's going to happen. So Barry thinks that it's our Joe from this timeline. But then he starts acting a little bit weird, which is then when Barry realizes that something is up, which obviously he's under the influence of the Blue Crystal. Now, the Blue Crystal does talk about like the imbalance of Barry's legacy, and that he mentions that there is no more like a negative Speed Force avatar because obviously Barry got rid of that in season 8. But then this crystal calls themselves like the real deal, and that Barry's going to pay for what he's done, in what sense is this to do with the negative Speed Force, or is this what he's done to Eddie's legacy? That will be interesting to see. But yeah, we then have like Cobalt Joe, or shall I say Cobalt Blue, versus Barry, and Joe tells Barry like, what's about to happen, and there's all like panic in the hospital because of like the blasts and everything like that, in which eventually Barry, he quote unquote defeats Cobalt Blue, but then Cobalt Blue gets up, he talks about how Barry is the chosen one, but now a new world begins, in which Barry just does his like classic lightning explosion that we saw him do a couple of times in season 8, and it was just a very, very cool scene in which Barry then sees the crystal momentarily, but he has to speed up because Captain Singh has entered the building, or well, Detective Singh. But yeah, this is when we have Barry suited up as the Flash and Eobard Thawne suited up as the Reverse Flash meeting each other after obviously they both ran their separate parts and they ended up meeting each other. And then this was when Barry mentions that he wanted to save Thawne. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen over here? In which he talks about the events of season 8 episode 5, where pretty much Barry saves the crowd that Thawne was meant to save, a crowd that was meant to thank Eobard. And then this was when he's like, you stole my greatest moment, I admired you and you humiliated me, and it was in that moment that I knew I had to get faster than you. That was the scene he was talking about in Armageddon, and he pretty much apologizes for that. Like, he says, I'm sorry, in which Thawne, he's obviously like jealous about it. He doesn't believe. He's like, okay, what are you trying to do? In which Barry tries to pep talk Thawne, and he's like, don't you see, all we do is just cause each other pain. Just walk away, don't do this. It was just a very intense scene, but also you do see like how desperate Barry is. Like, you know, he's trying to just stop Eobard from doing this plan. But obviously Barry is aware that if he does go with this plan, it's going to completely ruin Eobard's life as well. In which Thawne, he still blames Barry and just runs off, and it happens. We see the night of Nora Allen's murder. Everything comes full circle over here. It was just absolutely insane. The only bit that I found weird was the rotoscoping, where they added the new suit into the night of Nora Allen's murder. And this was when Barry was telling his past self not to interfere, or shall we say the original timeline Flash, where technically now Barry has become that version of the Flash. And this was him in the new suit, so that was pretty cool, but it did look a bit weird. Now, obviously, another new change was an interaction between Barry and Thawne right after Nora Allen's murder as well. This is when Eobard lost connection to the negative speed force, and Barry says, I had no choice, in which Nora Allen's murder is pretty much a fixed point, and Barry knew about this, and this is when Thawne gets angry, saying, finding ways to kill you is my life's work. And yeah, Thawne pretty much then clocks that, okay, Barry knew about this and I didn't. Now I'm going to have to watch you grow up, basically. So this is when everything comes full circle. And then we have Barry thanking Thawne because this night has haunted him for God knows how many years. And now Barry has finally made peace with it. And I'm just like, oh shit, okay, this is so cool. But yeah, the episode then ends with Cobalt Blue in like a lab, like, you know, everything's like glitching, and then we have red thunder up in the sky, in which the negative speed force strikes Eddie Thawne or Malcolm Thawne or Cobalt Blue, and now this character becomes a speedster, in which the negative speed force then presents like a classified file, which is Eddie Thawne, in which the character, Rick Cosner's character, says, who is Eddie Thawne? So that's obviously a big question mark, and this does lead me to believe that this guy will not be Eddie Thawne, maybe, or like what we need to know is how exactly he is alive, which we will find out soon enough if this is Eddie Thawne. Otherwise, it will be interesting to see how he comes into the fold with everything, if it is like Malcolm Thawne or something like that. But as I said, overall, guys, this episode was an absolute masterpiece, 100% one of the best episodes of the show ever. So I'm going to give this episode a straight 10 out of 10. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. If you guys have enjoyed the video, please give a like and subscribe. Be sure to let me know in the comment section down below what you guys thought about this episode. I'm interested to see all of your thoughts towards all of this as well. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video.